Now, next is our next speaker is Naomi Wimborne Idrissi. Naomi, I honestly haven't done a big write-up for you, because what can you say? The work that you've done and the way you helped build Jewish Voice for Labour, and the way you've fought for the Many Network, and you fought alongside us, a number of us doing that work, but you've been an absolute stalwart, fighting for the changes that we need. And your defense of Jeremy Corbyn at the time, when there was so many people, the weaponization of anti-Semitism, I was viciously attacked as well. But for a Jewish woman to stand up and do what you did, and to hear your voice on the television the way we used to, it was absolutely a breath of fresh air. And I know it mustn't have been easy for you at all, and it's great to work with you now. So all I can say is that's from the heart. So Naomi, would you like to make your contribution now?
Absolutely. It's a privilege, Audrey, to have worked with you and so many of the people on this call. So thank you ever so much for inviting me this evening. I don't think I need to go into points that have been covered very eloquently by others. Basically, we are all desperate for a powerful grassroots-led party to fill the void that's opened up on the left with Starmer's takeover of the Labour Party. And let's have a look at, I think it's important to notice the authoritarianism with which Starmer and his clique ran the Labour Party, the witch hunt that they brought into play against Jeremy on using anti-Semitism as a main weapon. It really signalled what's now going on in society. We thought it might play out, the authoritarianism within the party, if he were to take power. And my goodness, I think we've all been stunned at the extent to which that has turned out to be true. The protests, you and I have both been arrested. I'm sure there are others on this call who've been arrested for standing up for the right to take action in defense of Palestine. Ridiculous that that should happen under a Labour government. But I think we've got to be very realistic about the challenges that we face. And I've noticed some frustration in the chat about not confronting the difficulties that we've seen in forming this new party. Ken alluded to it without any, without pulling his punches at all. And I'm going to say it again. We have to look at the ways in which the left failed when Jeremy was leading the party. And we have to make sure that those political mistakes are not repeated. The way the anti-Semitism allegations were faced up to, or rather not seriously faced up to, the way the Brexit question was handled was also a mess. So we've got to review that, and we've got to make sure those lessons are learned. Also, organisationally, we must do what we did not do in that period, and that is empower the people in their communities. I love the way Crispin talked about it, and we've had some good contributions about this as well. This is why myself and you, Audrey, and Ken and Ian Hodson and a few other people formulated a platform for a Democratic Party a few weeks ago. We've now got more than 800 people who've signed that, because what we're saying is we need transparency and openness. I mean, I've sat and watched this movement grow for 2.5 years, and all the time there's been a lot of backroom deals, there's been secrecy, there's been people chatting away with confidential conversations going on, and constantly some of us have been arguing, no, bring it out into the open. Who is organising what? Who is putting what positions, and who is putting other positions? And it didn't happen. And I'm afraid that's one of the reasons that we have had these very distressing difficulties over the last few days. If we'd been open and transparent and accountable from the very, very first, I think we would be further ahead than we are now. One of the problems we had plotting behind the scenes, it was sort of a waiting for Godot. Why is Jeremy not starting a new party? Why has Jeremy not announced a new party? Over and over again, week after week. And people were getting frustrated and nothing was happening. So, and I think it's really important that we take note of what Ken Loach said alongside Yanis Varoufakis, an internationally renowned figure on the left, in a statement which was published in The Guardian and other places on Sunday, saying, and basically, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically it said, get your act together. We need unity. We need openness. We need democracy. We don't need factionalism. And we have had a lot of factionalism. If people want a bit of an account of that, Andrew Murray's written a piece in the Morning Star the last couple of days, which is not a bad account. There's a lot that isn't being said still, but that's quite a good one. So I know people have been quite skeptical about this new initiative called Our Party. I'm not saying we should all pile in and support it 100%, but it has tried to tackle, or it is trying to tackle, the difficulty we have because of this, making it all hang on Jeremy Corbyn's shoulders. Jeremy and the Independent Alliance MPs, what are they doing? Running, steering, they sometimes like to use that phrase, it sounds more benign, what is meant to be a grassroots-led movement. That is a serious problem, and it's not answered by simply saying, oh, well, we'll go to the founding conference and that problem will go away. It needs us to be empowered at the grassroots level from the first. What the Our Party people are suggesting, and I suggest just take it seriously, just look at it, just think about it. I'm not saying it's the solution, but they're saying rather than the Independent Alliance, including Zara Sultana, by the way, being at the top of the tree, can we please have some sort of independent grouping of people with some standing in the movement, and they would be named, we would know who they are, and hand over to them. I don't know if it'll work, but I think it's an idea well worth giving some credence to, and it shouldn't just be rubbished. And it's distressing the way the people behind that, who have named themselves, Joshua Virasamy and Jeanette Moorani, their names are publicly out there, that people have started to undermine them and allege all sorts of horrible things about them, which I won't go into. So if they were to get this alternative committee up and running, they would probably have no choice but to sort of take over the plan, which has already been put out to 800,000 people. That is a weakness, but it is not without the possibility of challenge. If there were a committee and we knew who they were, and we knew, and they were communicating with those 800,000 people on a regular basis, then people could say, hang on a minute, actually, we're not quite happy about this sortition thing. What does it mean? Why can we not form branches, however imperfect? I've spoken at many meetings of your party local groups. I'm down in Kent, and in the most unlikely places, a little coastal town called Deal, Dover you'll have heard of, Canterbury you'll have heard of. And there are groups of people there, and, you know, there aren't that many of them, and they haven't been given access to the data, which has already been mentioned as important, to reach out to everybody who's signed up in the area. There must be thousands who they haven't got contact with, but they are activists and they are trying to discuss the issues, talk about the politics, what kind of party do they need. It's not beyond the bounds of possibility that groups like those could form up legitimately enough to say, right, we would like these two people, we've heard what they say, we know what they do, we would like those people to represent us at the founding conference. There's possibilities. People will say it's not democratic, actually, because in some areas you'll get these sort of pre-organized lefty factions that we all know of old taking over, winning the democratic votes in those small groups and so on. It's not without problems, I agree. But if we could take control out of the hands of the Independent Alliance, put it in the hands of a more independent group, which will always be open to question. Obviously, people will challenge individuals. We might be able to say, hang on a minute, let's look at this alternative way of organising. The last thing I want to talk about is what kind of a party we want. I've seen in the chat people calling for revolution tomorrow. I've seen people talking about, oh, well, we're not all working class. There's all sorts of differences in the way the people attracted to our party, your party, the new party, all sorts of different ideas. So although we need to find a way, this is going to be really hard. How do we combine the sort of political sharpness that Ken Loach correctly opened this meeting by discussing, the principles that we all stand by? How do we marry that with a party with mass appeal? This has got to be a grassroots party that acts in communities. It acts on Palestine, acts on housing, it acts on racism, it acts on defending refugees, it acts on sewage in the water, everything that matters to people. Those people are not all going to be clued up revolutionaries, are they? They're going to have socially conservative ideas. And this is why I would have argued with Zara about suggesting that there was no place for socially conservative views in the party. Maybe not in the leadership, but are you really going to say to people in the country who are not very well clued up about trans issues, for example, or even seeing some appeal in what reform says, have racist ideas? Are you going to say, no, I can't have you in our housing campaign because you said something uncomplimentary about migrants the other day? We have got an education job to do here. It's really serious and it's going to be difficult. But that's how do we do this? Political sharpness on the one hand, mass appeal to people who have all kinds of ideas that we're going to have to educate them out of in the movement. So that's a huge challenge. Basically, I just want to end by saying we need the unity that Yanis and Ken were calling for in their appeal the other day. We need grassroots mobilization of people getting together and sharing their very different ideas across this movement. I would appeal to everybody who's not yet involved to look at the campaign, so the Community Action Network, which is having a convention in Birmingham this weekend on Saturday, September the 27th, bringing people together. It's what we wanted to do in For the Many network, and I think these people are doing it. So have a look at that. So yeah, unified, democratic, grassroots-led, transparent, open, and build a force that can fight the right and build a better society for us all. Thank you.
Thanks, Naomi. I knew I shouldn't have given you such a big send up there. I knew you'd take more than 5 minutes twice.
Oh,
Thanks,
God.
thanks very much for your contribution. I'm only joking.